Snow blanketed the Bavarian Alps, but the cold did nothing to still the fury rising in the man who stalked the ridge. Victor Creed, Sabretooth, had no use for warmth, no patience for hesitation. The mountain air sharpened his senses. He could smell blood in the wind. Not fresh blood, old blood, the kind tied to memories. The kind he never forgets. It had been decades since the war. Decades since the Black Ops mission in World War II that had gone south, badly. A secret Nazi lab buried under these very peaks. Back then, Creed hadn't been working alone. No, he had a partner. A soldier in blue with a star on his chest. The only man he never truly managed to break. Steve Rogers, Captain America. They had once fought side by side against a common enemy. But even then, Creed's methods had been too vicious, too feral. Cap had called him a monster. Creed had smiled, baring his teeth. He was a monster, and he didn't care. Their uneasy alliance fell apart in blood and fire when Creed turned on the team of Allied scientists, killing them all for fun. Steve had tried to stop him. Tried and failed. Sabretooth vanished into the war-torn shadows, and Captain America never found the bodies. Now, nearly 80 years later, the ghosts had come crawling back. Elsewhere, Washington, D.C., present day. Steve Rogers stood in the war room at the Smithsonian Intelligence Wing, the light from the holographic table casting ghost blue reflections on his face. His jaw was tight, his eyes sharper than ever. "They found it," said Agent Sharon Carter beside him. The hidden Nazi facility. SHIELD had it buried in red tape for years, but someone got there first. All data files gone, biological samples missing. Steve's brow furrowed. "Who?" Carter tapped the screen. A brutal, grainy camera feed came up. The image shook, flickering in and out, but it was clear. A tall, hulking figure with yellowed fangs and feral eyes. Claws sliced through steel. Bodies dropped in pools of red. No hesitation, no mercy. Sabretooth. "He's looking for something," Carter said. "Something from the old world. Maybe he thinks it belongs to him." Steve looked again at the image, at the face of the man he thought he'd never see again. He doesn't just want something. He wants to finish what he started. Days later, Bavaria, Germany. The Alps were still frozen in time. Snow powdered the old trails like ashes. Captain America moved with silent purpose, his shield secured to his back. He had come alone against every warning. But this fight wasn't one for teams, it was personal. He reached the stone entrance to the old Nazi bunker. The steel doors were torn open like paper. Inside, flickering lights revealed corridors, stained with blood and lined with old Nazi symbols. But deeper down, beyond the rusted labs and shattered test chambers, something more dangerous waited. Steve found a sealed vault ripped open. Inside was a broken cryogenic chamber labeled Project Leviathan. Files lay scattered. Test subjects, gene splicing, hybridization of mutant DNA with experimental super soldier serum. Roger's chest tightened. He remembered this project. He'd shut it down in 1945, or so he thought. A voice growled behind him. "Took you long enough, soldier." Steve spun and raised his shield. Sabretooth emerged from the shadows bigger than before. His muscles bulged beneath torn tactical gear. His claws glinted in the dim light. His fangs were longer. Whatever he had taken from the vault, it had enhanced him further. "You were always the boy scout," Sabretooth sneered. "Still playing hero in a world full of wolves." "You're done, Creed," Steve said firmly. "Walk away before I put you down." Creed snarled. "Walk away? I just found my second chance. You stopped Leviathan then, but now I'm the result. I'm faster, stronger, and meaner than ever." He cracked his neck and stalked forward. "You and me, Rogers. This time, no backup, no war to distract us. Just you, me, and Bones breaking in the dark." Steve lowered into a stance, eyes calm, shield raised. "I didn't come to talk," he said. "I came to finish it." Flashback. 1945, final days of the war. A young Steve Rogers, bruised but relentless, fights through a Nazi base beside Sabretooth. They tear through guards, Steve with precise strikes and Creed with unhinged violence. But the moment they reach the lab, Creed turns, slaughters the scientists, and grins with blood on his lips. Steve confronts him. They brawl, brutal, primal. Steve is skilled, but Creed is relentless. A support beam collapses. The lab explodes. Creed disappears in the fire. Steve believed him dead. Back to present, inside the vault. Now the past had come full circle. The man Steve had failed to stop had risen again. But this time, Steve Rogers wasn't just a soldier. He was the embodiment of discipline, will, and justice. Sabretooth lunged forward, claws ready. Steve didn't flinch. Their eyes locked like titans from different worlds. Order versus chaos. Soldier versus beast. The darkness inside the bunker echoed with the sound of footsteps closing in. The battle was about to begin. And this time, only one would walk out standing. The icy air inside the ruined bunker turned electric as the silence shattered. Sabretooth lunged, a blur of muscle and fury, claws slashing through the dark like twin blades of death. Captain America rolled, narrowly avoiding the first strike, his shield scraping against the concrete as he sprang back to his feet. Creed hit the wall with a roar, stone and steel collapsing behind him. "You've gotten slower, Rogers." Steve didn't answer. He never wasted words in battle. He launched his shield, vibranium whistling through the air. Sabretooth ducked, but Steve was already moving, catching the rebound, mid-stride and slamming it into Creed's chest with a thundering blow. Sabretooth skidded back but barely winced. "That tickled!" He pounced. The claws came fast, furious and wild. Steve blocked, deflected, dodged. Each strike came from a different angle. Sabretooth fought like a beast, but one that had studied pain, learned from it and made it a weapon. Steve's forearm burned where a claw grazed his suit. Another slice tore across his side. He gritted his teeth, focus, no fear, no hesitation. Steve ducked low, slamming Creed with a spinning heel kick that cracked ribs. Creed snarled and retaliated with a backhand that sent Steve flying into a rusted support beam. Metal groaned. Steve groaned louder, but he stood. Creed came again. This time, Steve let him close. Sabretooth raised his arm, and Steve trapped it under his own, pulling him into a judo throw that smashed Creed through a table of broken test tubes and steel. "Still fighting like a soldier," Creed spat, rising from the glass. "That's your weakness, rules, honor. Me, I fight to kill." "Then you'll never understand what makes me stronger," Steve replied. Creed roared and charged. They collided again. Shield met claws, fist met jaw. The room trembled from the impacts. This was no fancy superhero duel. This was war. Every move, every blow carried history. Blood from the past. Hatred born in fire. Steve was breathing hard now. His ribs ached. His side bled. Sabretooth's healing factor was keeping him fresh. But Steve was human even at his best. Still, the shield was his equalizer. When Creed lunged again, Steve dropped low, using Creed's momentum to send him crashing into the wall, then followed with a precision strike to the throat, then the knee, then a rising elbow that broke Creed's nose. For the first time, Creed stumbled. "I've studied your moves," Steve said. "Every time you get reckless, you leave your left rib exposed." Creed grinned, blood running down his lip. "And you talk too much." Suddenly he faked right, then bit down hard on Steve's shoulder. Steve screamed, pain shooting through his arm as Creed ripped through muscle. He smashed the shield into Creed's skull to break the grip, staggering back, arm barely usable. Creed panted. "You're slowing down." Steve switched the shield to his offhand. Still standing. The lights flickered. Explosions echoed somewhere deeper in the bunker, systems overloading. The place was about to collapse, but neither man moved. Creed lunged one last time, his claws raised high. Steve waited until the final instant, then fell backward, using Creed's weight and rage against him. As Creed flew overhead, Steve kicked him into the air, then hurled his shield with brutal precision. Crack! The shield slammed into Sabretooth's jaw, knocking out teeth and sending him spinning into a power console. Sparks exploded. Creed convulsed, twitching in pain. His healing factor, struggling to catch up with the shock and damage. He tried to rise, but Steve was already there, grabbing his shield and driving it into Creed's throat, pinning him to the ground. "You lost, Creed," Steve growled. "Not because you're weaker, but because you don't stand for anything." Creed clawed at the air, blood in his mouth. "You think That makes you better. No, Steve said. It makes me human. Creed passed out. Steve staggered to his feet as alarms blared. The base began to rumble, set to self-destruct. He activated a distress beacon and limped through the collapsing tunnels, dragging Creed behind him. Outside, as the bunker imploded into snow and flame, a SHIELD extraction team descended. Captain America emerged, bloodied but unbowed, Sabretooth in restraints at his side. Agent Carter looked shocked. You did it alone. Steve Rogers looked back at the smoke and ash rising behind them. No, I just ended a chapter that should have stayed buried.